Hi.
Oh, thank you so much for having us over. Thank you. Wow.
Welcome to my little
Thank you so much.
bird and butterfly.
So nicely done, yeah.
It's a space that has evolved with time.
Yeah.
I was very young when I got this place.
How young?
I was 20.
Wow.
Yeah, come.
Nice.
Would you like some tea, coffee?
No, I'm good, thanks. Hi Dia, welcome to Tell Me All on the Quint.
Welcome to my home.
Thank you so much for having us. So, Tell Me All is a show where we get slightly inquisitive, but we ensure that our boundaries are maintained. Okay? So, before we talk a lot more about your films, your journey in the industry, tell me, what was Dia Mirza's childhood like?
Childhood has had many interesting phases, but the one thing that I definitely, feel most grateful for was that despite the complications and the tragedies that I had to deal with very young, my parents' separation, both of them remarrying, losing my biological father at the age of 9, who I was extremely attached and close to. The most distinct aspect of my childhood will always be for me that I felt abundant freedom, and I grew up in an environment that really fostered love and a spirit of empathy. Being privy to such interesting conversations and debates at home on politics and science and culture and religion. It was just a very free, beautiful, happy childhood for the most part.
There are instances in our life that kind of give us a small jolt, but we kind of pick ourselves up and we start again. But these are also sometimes the one that kind of define who we grow up to be.
I would say it was losing my father at 9. I think that helped me understand at a very young age that life is finite. And I think I just became very, I used to keep repeating this. I would say, live each day as if it were your last. And I truly believed it and lived that way. And then, of course, yeah, you're right. Life does take over at some point. And I remember after I won the Miss India and became the Miss Asia Pacific, and I was just like being, taken from one place to the other. I was consumed with ridiculous amounts of work, which included travel. And while I enjoyed that aspect of it, there was very little room and time to just be. I had never lived like that before, so it was extremely. It made me lose my center, and it really freaked me out. And I was also very quickly doing films, and there was this one in the initial phase of my career, I was working on 5 films at a time. The work hours were crazy. My stepfather passed away, and that was, I think, a significant jolt, because when you're 21 and you've, lived a little and kind of are beginning to find your foothold in a new industry, a new space, and something so drastic happens. And I'd experienced loss before as a child, but when you're at that age, I think it kind of really changes everything for you.
Yeah.
And it was a good way to rediscover everything that I'd always stood for, and kind of step back and look at myself and say, what this place is turning me into is not who I am. I need to go back to finding that truth that I've always known. And go back to being me. If I hadn't done it, I think I would be just terrible at everything I did. Because I think what was happening was my films weren't working at the box office. Of course, now people refer to Rehna Tere Dil Mein as a cult film, etc. But at the time, it was declared a box office failure. I think there was extraordinary pressure that I put on myself, because for some reason, the industry also treats you very differently when your films work, and it treats you very differently when your films don't work. It's almost like it's your fault that a film hasn't worked. So I think I needed to kind of step back. Then I wasn't so interested in playing the lead in a film. I started doing films like Parinita, Lage Raho Manna Bhai, Tehzeeb, many others like that.
Yeah.
The desire was to be a part of good stories
Yeah.
and play strong characters within really good
Yeah.
stories. And that created a shift. And I mean, a lot of people may say, why would you let up the opportunity to play the lead?
Right.
And I said, I would say that because at that time it put extraordinary pressure on me and it stifled me. And I would much rather be a part of meaningful,
Yeah.
spaces that respected me and gave me the room to just be than to kind of carry that burden of your film has to work and it's all on you.
Yeah. It's really stressful.
It's very freeing to not have to worry about that.
Yeah. And you're
And those who can do it, hats off to them.
Yeah.
I've never been able to manage that pressure.
Of course, you've been a part of a lot of films and shows now. Do you remember your first audition?
I didn't have to audition.
You didn't have to audition. So how did you get Rehna Tere Dil Mein?
I actually got signed for a film called Om Jai Jagdish.
Okay.
Anupam Kher had met me while just after I won the Asia Pacific.
Okay.
There was this big party happening at the Grand Kakatiya in Hyderabad, and Anil Kapoor and Anupam Kher were there, and they were like, "Will you do this movie?"
Oh.
And I said, "You'll have to ask my parents."
Okay.
It was as simple as that, which is why I think for me, in the first few years of being in film, I recognized the fact that I was very lucky. There were, thousands of young people who were struggling to find just one opportunity or even a chance. And here I was with like the best producers, the best, actors, just with great teams getting these great opportunities. And so I worked really hard.
Of course you did.
And I was like, I can't undermine this opportunity and disrespect it.
Did you at any point find this entire world of cinema overwhelming?
Of course.
Yeah.
Because there's media, there's all kinds of pressure, there's all kinds of expectations. You are turned into a commodity very quickly, especially when you have to sell your film, you have to promote yourself. And at that time, there was no social media. So there was no opportunity to put your own voice forward. So nobody really knew you other than the stories that people wrote about you. And so many of them were untrue, so many of them were deeply disrespectful. They used to be all kinds. I remember once saying in an interview that why is it that young women, when they are actors, are constantly linked with their leading men? Why do people think that that's the only way women can get ahead
It's
in
really
their careers? It used to happen so much, and all those rumors were untrue. So it used to really bother me. I hated being linked with my directors or my co-actors.
Sounds
it really,
awful.
Yeah. But it used to happen a lot back then.
Talking about opinions, like you said, you've always spoken your mind, and you continue to do so. What is it that still kind of pushes you to still be this person, whether it's politics, whether it's the environment, whether it's rights? You're always out there giving your opinion and saying, I'm going to speak my mind.
Honestly, Swati, I think I have stopped expressing an opinion in the last 4 years, 3
Okay.
years. Yeah, 3 years.
Okay.
And that was a conscious decision. I only express support. So, in that, of course, there is
Yeah.
opinion.
But there's something that you're still doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will talk about the good work that's happening. I will promote what needs to be done.
Yes.
I will share what's wrong. But I don't express personal opinion because things were getting they were getting out of hand. And all kinds of personal attacks were made. And of course, were made by people who are nameless and faceless. Mostly, system-generated trolls that kind of say the same thing,
Yeah.
and it's so obvious and evident to us what is creating that and who the people are behind it. My mom didn't understand that. It terrified her.
Of course.
When I was threatened with acid attacks or death threats or rape threats, she was like, we don't need this. She's like, you do good work, you just focus on doing the good work. You just keep doing that. I don't want to live with the fear of you getting hurt when you go out. And I keep my life very real and very basic, Swati. I'll go to the market, I'll buy my vegetables, I'll, go for a walk, I'll do everything. And she's like, I don't want you to be scared. I was like, I'm not scared. But she said, I am.
She's a mother.
Yeah. So stop. And now I'm a mother myself. So I have to be cognizant of so much more.
Yeah.
Because I don't want my voice to be a reason for my children to have to deal with pain. So I'll, recite a poem. I will share a story. But I feel that's necessary because I cannot be a spectator.
Yeah,
my personality doesn't allow me to be a mute spectator. I feel like every one of us has a big part to play in the direction that our world is moving in.
How has motherhood changed you as a person? You already seem like such a solid person. I don't know what else could have changed. Really.
No, I've always been a patient person. I've become more patient in the last 5-6 years because I've worked really hard on myself. But motherhood, I think, has made me more awake and alive to the present moment.
They are talking about a society, women have always been kind of conditioned that, you hit a certain age, you're going to get married, that's your tick box, then you're going to have a child, that's your tick box, and work can happen as and when you like and whatever, right? Do you feel as a woman there's a shift in this thinking, or do you think that kind of conditioning still continues to exist in our society?
I think there's a dual aspect to this. So one is of course conditioning, but the other is also self-conditioning. So I know for the longest time that when I was in my 20s, by the time I was 25, 26, my biological clock was ticking. And I was crazy. I was obsessed with children and I was dying to have a child. And I know that for the most part of my early 30s, I beat myself up because I didn't have a child. And it used to drive me nuts, right? So I think there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves as women because we have these preconceived notions about these goalposts of life that I want to be this age when I get married, I want to be this age when I have a child. And it was only when I was in my mid-30s that I realized that I was really just making myself unwell. And I was being absolutely disrespectful to myself and my journey. By the time I hit 36, 37, I was like, wow, I love being me. I love being older because it's giving me so much more clarity.
Is there a message you have for the women who are probably putting themselves through exactly what you did and maybe I did at one point?
Be kind with yourself. Our fear as women is intergenerational. It's our legacy. It's what we inherit. Fear of being hurt, fear of being molested, fear of being raped, fear of being disrespected, misunderstood.
Fear of disappointing.
That's like the big fear. The only way we can uncondition our minds and ourselves and our lives is to recognize that is this choice or this decision coming from a place of fear, or is it coming from a place of love? I think that's the simplest way I can put it.
Coming back to the industry, Dia, if you look back to the roles that you were doing back then and today you have a Dak Dak, which is phenomenal, right? How do you look at the shift in the industry when it's coming, when we talk about roles for women? And do you think we still have a long way to go?
So there are lots of very powerful films and roles written for women even before the 80s, 40s, 50s. 80s, it happened more in what was then called art cinema. It didn't happen so much in your mainstream commercial cinema. In fact, I feel like some of the worst roles for women were written in the 80s in the commercial space because they propagated and perpetuated all kinds of nonsense. They were misogynistic, they were sexist. I think what has changed is the fact that there is better representation of women. The men are better informed now and are just more sensitized towards what can drive equality. I think social media has played a very big role in informing people and definitely representation helps. I remember when I started working in film, I would be one of the 2 people who would be a woman on a set.
Wow.
Yeah, me and my hairdresser. And at that time, the hairdressers were only allowed to be women. So only men were allowed to do your makeup.
Wow.
Yeah, that changed like 7 or 8 years ago.
That's
It's
really
that
surprising.
recent, yeah. It's definitely a safer work environment. Thanks to the MeToo movement and the MeToo movement in India, there's been all kinds of, and also because so much of filmmaking as a process has been corporatized. So all these international platforms have very strong laws and rules, and the contracts are extremely binding. And I think a lot of people are at better behavior in general than they perhaps were when, a decade ago. I've been lucky for the most part, but I've also had experiences where I remember for the longest time I would get my hairdresser to share my room with me. I would refuse to stay alone in a hotel room.
Because it's fair.
You never know who would show up at your door.
Yeah.
At what time of the night.
My God, that sounds really so unhealthy to be kind of
It
working.
is, but that's how it was. You had to find ways to protect yourself that would not hurt the
And feel
egos,
offensive.
of the men that you were working with.
Thank you so much for talking to me, Dia, and really here's hoping that you always have films that serve you, that always give you the credit that you deserve, and always find your center.
I just want to do films that can serve a larger purpose.
Yes, and eventually serve the larger
They'll
purpose.
serve me well as long as they serve a larger purpose. But it was so lovely talking to you,
Same here.
Swati.
Thank you so much,
so
dear.
much.